Hello, friend. Welcome to Science for Sleep. Whether you're returning tonight or just finding this channel for the first time, this is a quiet place to slow down, learn something gentle, and let the day gradually fall away. Tonight, we are going to spend some time with roses, a flower so familiar that it can almost feel ordinary at first. A red rose in a glass vase, a pink rose opening in a garden, a white rose resting quietly in someone's hand. Roses appear at weddings, on kitchen tables, beside old stone paths, in perfume bottles, in poems, and in memories. They are often treated as symbols of love, beauty, and care. But the rose is much older than all of that. Long before people gave roses to each other, long before they became Valentine's flowers, long before their petals appeared in art or stories, rose-like plants were already growing on Earth. Fossil evidence shows that members of the rose family were here at least 35 million years ago. That means the deep story of roses reaches back to a world filled with ancient forests, changing climates, and animals no human ever saw. A rose is not only a soft decoration. It is part of an old botanical line that learned how to survive. It grew stems, leaves, flowers, fruit, and sharp defenses. And some of those defenses are still misunderstood. The sharp points on a rose stem are often called thorns, but most roses do not have true thorns. They have prickles. A true thorn grows from the deeper woody part of a plant, like a small branch changed into a spike. A rose prickle grows from the outer skin of the stem. It is more like a sharp hook attached to the surface. That small detail changes the way the rose feels. The stem is not simply decorated with sharpness. It is protected by it. If you enjoy these quiet journeys, you're welcome to subscribe. And if it feels natural, to leave a comment sharing where you're listening from tonight. It helps others find their way to this calm corner of the world, one sleepy traveler at a time. The quiet continues here, just as it is. And as the rose protects itself below, it opens above. Its petals unfold in layers, soft and curved, sometimes pale as cream, sometimes deep red, sometimes yellow, peach, pink, or nearly purple. But the part of the rose that reaches us most deeply may not be what we see. It may be what rises from it. A rose's scent is not one single smell. It is a small cloud of invisible chemistry. Tiny scent molecules lift from the petals and float through the air. Some of these molecules smell sweet and floral. Some bring hints of citrus, honey, fruit, spice, or fresh green leaves. One rose may smell soft and powdery. Another may smell rich, warm, and almost like tea. Another may barely smell at all, even if it looks perfect. That is because scent depends on the type of rose, the age of the bloom, the weather, the time of day, and the exact mix of chemicals inside the petals. A rose in morning air may not smell exactly the same as that same rose in the heat of afternoon. Warmth can help more scent molecules rise. Cool air can hold the fragrance closer and softer. So even the scent of a rose is not fixed. It changes gently with the moment. And then, after the flower has opened, after insects have visited, after the petals begin to loosen and fall, the rose may enter another quiet stage. Many roses form rose hips. These are small round or oval structures, often red or orange, that hold the seeds of the plant. They can look like tiny lanterns along the stem after the bloom is gone. Birds and small mammals may eat them. People have used rose hips in teas, syrups, jams, and old remedies, partly because they can contain vitamin C. So the rose does not simply appear, bloom, and vanish. It keeps changing. The flower becomes fruit. The fruit carries seeds. The seeds carry the chance of another plant. And this is where the rose begins to feel different. Not just as a symbol, not just as something beautiful, but as a living thing with a long memory written into its shape. A plant that can be soft and sharp at the same time, fragrant and defensive, ancient and familiar, temporary in bloom, but patient in its roots. Tonight, the rose can be followed slowly, from its petals to its scent, from its wild beginnings to the meanings people placed upon it. And for now, all it asks is that the eyes rest on one simple image. A quiet rose opening in the dark, its petals still, its stem guarded, its scent rising into the air. That quiet rose in the dark did not begin as a perfect garden flower. Before people bred roses into tight spirals, long stems, and heavy blooms, roses lived as wild shrubs. They grew along forest edges, in open fields, beside paths, near rivers, and across rough hillsides where sunlight could reach them. The rose belongs to the genus Rosa. A genus is a group of closely related plants. Inside Rosa, there are more than 100 wild species, and most of them come from the temperate parts of the Northern Hemisphere. Temperate simply means places with changing seasons, where summers are warm, winters can be cold, and plants must know how to rest and return. Wild roses grew across Europe, Asia, North America, and parts of North Africa. They were not waiting in neat rows. They were tangled into hedges, leaning over streams, climbing through other shrubs, and spreading in places where animals, wind, rain, and winter shaped them. A wild rose often looks much simpler than the rose in a florist shop. Many wild roses have 5 petals. 5 soft petals open wide around a bright yellow center. That yellow center is filled with stamens, the small pollen-making parts of the flower. Instead of hiding its center beneath dozens of folded petals, a wild rose often shows it clearly. It opens like a small dish in the sun. This shape matters. A simple open bloom makes it easier for insects to land. Bees can crawl across the center and gather pollen. Flies, beetles, and other small insects can visit too. The flower does not need to look full or dramatic to do its work. It only needs to attract the right visitors and give them access to pollen. A modern garden rose can look very different. Some have so many petals that the center is almost impossible to see. A hybrid tea rose may hold its petals in a high pointed spiral. A cabbage rose can look round and heavy, packed with layers that fold over each other like soft fabric. Some modern roses bloom again and again through the season. Some are bred for long stems, strong color, and the ability to survive days in a vase after being cut. These roses can feel almost impossible, as if they were designed more like ornaments than wild plants. And in a way, they were. Human hands slowly chose the roses that looked fuller, lasted longer, smelled stronger, bloomed more often, or carried unusual colors. Over many generations, those choices changed the rose. But beneath the garden form, the older rose is still there. The woody stem, the toothed leaves with small jagged edges, the prickles along the canes, the flower built around reproduction, the hip forming after the bloom. The wild rose reminds us that the rose was not born as a gift. It was born as a living shrub. Some wild species, like the dog rose, Rosa canina, grow through hedgerows in Europe and Western Asia. Its pale pink or white flowers often open with 5 petals, and its red hips remain after the flowers fade. Another species, Rosa rugosa, native to Eastern Asia, has wrinkled leaves, strong fragrance, tough stems, and large round hips that can turn red in late summer and autumn. It is so hardy that it can grow near coasts where salt spray and wind make life difficult for many plants. These wild roses are not delicate in the way a bouquet seems delicate. They are practical. They hold soil. They feed insects. They shelter small birds. They turn flowers into fruit. They survive cold months by dropping leaves and waiting through dormancy, a resting state when growth slows until warmth returns. When humans first noticed roses, they were not looking at something weak. They were looking at a plant that could return after winter, guard itself with sharp hooks, feed pollinators in bloom, and feed animals again when hips ripened. The softness was only one part of it. The rose had already learned how to live. So before the rose became a symbol of romance, before it stood for beauty, secrecy, longing, or grief, it was a wild thing with a clear purpose. It opened its 5 petals to the light. It offered pollen. It protected its stems. It prepared seeds. And in that older shape, simpler than the garden rose but far from plain, the deeper power of the rose begins to appear. The wild rose was already a survivor before it ever entered a garden. Its simple 5-petaled bloom was not plain. It was old, very old. Fossil leaves that resemble roses have been found in ancient rock layers, including deposits in North America that are about 34 to 35 million years old. That places rose-like plants back in the late Eocene and early Oligocene, a time when Earth's climate was changing in a deep way. The Eocene was warmer. The Oligocene that followed became cooler and drier in many regions. Forests shifted. Grasslands began to spread in some places. Animals changed with the land. And somewhere inside those long changes, rose relatives kept growing. Not as perfect red flowers in glass vases, not as trimmed bushes beside a walkway, but as shrubs rooted in real soil, responding to weather, insects, animals, and seasons. A shrub is a woody plant, with several stems rising from near the ground. That form gave roses a quiet strength. They did not need one tall trunk like an oak. They could send up many canes. If one stem broke, another could keep growing. If winter burned the tips with cold, the roots could wait below the soil. When spring returned, new growth could rise again. This is part of what made the rose design so lasting. A rose does not depend only on the short life of a flower. The bloom may last a few days. The petals may loosen and fall, but the plant beneath it keeps storing energy, growing leaves, and preparing for the next cycle. Its leaves catch sunlight and use it to make sugar. Its stems carry water upward. Its roots hold the plant in place and pull moisture from the ground. And after pollination, many roses form hips, the seed-bearing structures that can remain long after the petals are gone. In autumn, those hips can turn red or orange. They stand out against fading leaves and bare branches. For birds, they can be food. For the plant, they are a way to send its future outward. This pattern gave roses more than one season of usefulness. In spring or summer, flowers could attract insects. Later, hips could attract animals that helped move seeds. In winter, the plant could rest. Then warmth could return, and the cycle could begin again. Across millions of years, that rhythm mattered. Earth was never still. Ice expanded and retreated. Rainfall patterns changed. Forests opened and closed. Some landscapes became wetter. Others became colder or more exposed. A plant that could grow as a hardy shrub, protect itself with prickles, bloom when conditions were right, and carry seeds inside bright hips had a strong chance of continuing. This is why the rose can feel delicate and enduring at the same time. The flower is brief. The design is not. When a rose opens, it may seem like a moment of softness, but behind that moment is a pattern that has survived climate shifts, animal browsing, insect visits, cold seasons, dry spells, and long stretches of time no person could ever measure by memory. The rose is not ancient because one single plant lived for millions of years. It is ancient because the form kept returning. Generation after generation, seed after seed, shrub after shrub. A small plant would grow. It would leaf out. It would flower. It would make hips. Its seeds might fall nearby or travel in the body of a bird or mammal. And somewhere, under the right conditions, another rose would begin. That slow repetition is easy to miss because a bloom asks for attention. The petals are what the eye follows. But the deeper story is in the pattern. A rose is a living design that found a way to carry beauty through survival. Its shape did not last only because it was pleasing. It lasted because each part had work to do. The petals, the pollen, the prickles, the leaves, the hips, and the roots all belong to the same quiet plan. And once that becomes clear, the beauty of the rose starts to feel less like decoration and more like evidence. That evidence is easiest to see when the rose is not treated as a symbol first. For a moment, it can simply be seen as a flower, a real structure built from living parts. The petals are the first thing most people notice. They curve outward, overlap gently, and catch the light in soft folds. But petals did not begin as decoration. In plant science, petals are modified leaves. That means they are leaf-like structures that changed over time to serve a different purpose. Instead of making most of the plant's food, the way green leaves do, petals help draw attention to the flower. Their color, shape, softness, and sometimes scent help guide insects toward the center. In a simple wild rose, this is easy to see. 5 petals open around the middle, leaving the yellow center exposed. That center is not empty. It is crowded with the working parts of the flower. The thin yellow threads are called stamens. Stamens make pollen. Pollen is the fine dust-like material that carries the male reproductive cells of the plant. When a bee crawls across a wild rose, Pollen can cling to the hairs on its body. Then, when the bee visits another flower, some of that pollen may rub off. At the center of the rose are the pistils. A pistil is the female part of the flower. It receives pollen and connects down toward the place where seeds can form. In roses, there can be many pistils gathered together in the center, each one connected to a tiny seed-forming structure. So the middle of a rose is not just a yellow glow. It is a small, busy landscape. Pollen is being offered. Insects are being guided. Seeds may be prepared. Everything is arranged around the chance of another rose. This is why the older, simpler rose shape is so practical. An open flower is easier for insects to enter. The pollen is easy to reach. The reproductive parts are visible and available. A bee does not need to push through thick folds of petals. It can land, walk, gather, and leave. The bloom is beautiful, but it is also clear. Modern garden roses often change that balance. Many of them are called double roses. A double rose has many more petals than a simple wild rose. In some double roses, the extra petals developed from parts that would have been stamens. Instead of making pollen, those parts became petal-like. The result can be a full, rounded bloom with dozens of layers. Some old garden roses and modern hybrids can have 30, 50, or even more than 100 petals in a single flower. To human eyes, this can look rich and luxurious. The center may be hidden completely. The rose may look like folded silk, with no clear beginning or end. But for an insect, that same fullness can make the flower harder to use. The pollen may be reduced. The center may be buried. The path inward may be blocked by layers of petals. This does not make double roses wrong or unnatural in a simple way. It shows how human desire can pull a flower in a new direction. A wild rose is built mostly for survival and reproduction. A heavily bred garden rose is often built for display, fragrance, color, and the feeling it gives to people. Both are roses, but they reveal different priorities. One opens its center plainly to the world. The other folds inward, layer after layer, holding its center out of sight. Inside every rose bloom, even the most romantic one, there is still a quiet biological order. Sepals hold the bud before it opens. Petals attract attention. Stamens make pollen. Pistils receive it. The base of the flower can later swell into a hip. The whole bloom is temporary, but it is not random. It opens for a reason. It offers color for a reason. It places scent, pollen, and shape together for a reason. And when people look at a rose and feel that it is graceful, they are noticing something real, even if they do not name it. They are seeing balance, protection outside, softness above, a center built for life. The rose may rest in a vase as if it were only a lovely object, but the form came from a living task. Its beauty is not separate from its work. The bloom is soft, yes. It is quiet. It is delicate. But it is also a small biological machine, opening carefully around the future it was made to protect. That small biological machine does not sit unguarded. Below the petals, below the pollen, below the soft folds that catch the eye, the rose holds a different kind of structure. The stem rises green or brown, sometimes smooth when young, sometimes woody with age. Along it are the sharp points people have called thorns for centuries. But on most roses, they are not true thorns. They are prickles. A true thorn is a branch or stem that has changed into a sharp point. Plants like hawthorn and some citrus trees have true thorns because the sharp structure grows from deeper woody tissue. A prickle is different. It grows from the outer layers of the plant. It is more like a sharp surface hook than a tiny branch. On a rose cane, a prickle can often be broken off more easily than a true thorn because it is attached closer to the surface. That small difference is quiet, but important. It shows that the rose's sharpness is part of its skin. The plant wears its defense on the outside. A rose cane is the long stem that grows from the base of the plant. Some canes stand upright. Some arch outward. Some stretch several feet in a season, especially in climbing or rambling roses. On many of these canes, the prickles curve backward. They are not always straight needles. They can look like little hooks, facing down toward the base of the stem. This shape can make the rose harder for animals to eat. A deer, goat, rabbit, or grazing animal that pushes its face into the plant may meet a stem that catches, scratches, or resists. The prickles do not make the rose impossible to eat. Many animals still browse roses, but they make the plant less easy, less soft, less open to being taken without cost. In nature, even a small delay can matter. A hungry animal may choose a smoother plant nearby. A young shoot with fewer prickles may be eaten first, while a tougher cane survives long enough to leaf, flower, and set hips. For some roses, prickles may also help with climbing. Many climbing roses do not climb like vines with curling tendrils. A pea plant has tendrils that wrap. Ivy has small gripping roots. But roses often scramble. They lean, arch, and hook themselves into nearby branches, fences, shrubs, or trees. Their prickles can catch against bark or twigs. This lets the canes rest higher in the sunlight. A rose growing through a hedge may use nearby plants like a quiet ladder. The stem reaches upward. The prickle catches. The cane holds for a while. Then new growth stretches farther. It is not fast movement, but over a season, the plant can lift itself into brighter air. That is the practical side of rose sharpness. Protection, support, a way to survive among animals and other plants. But humans noticed something else too. They saw the contrast. A rose can have petals soft enough to bruise under a fingertip and stems sharp enough to draw blood. The same plant offers fragrance and resistance. It invites the eye and stops the hand. That is part of why roses became such strong symbols. They do not feel simple. A flower with no sharpness might mean only sweetness. A thorny stem with no flower might mean only danger. But the rose holds both together. Softness above, sharpness below, color, scent, and warning on the same living stem. This is not just poetic. It is built into the plant. The petal helps draw insects and human attention. The prickle helps protect the cane that carries the leaves and flowers. The rose is beautiful, but it is not helpless. It can be cut, trained, bred, carried, and placed in a vase. But in the wild, It is a shrub with defenses. It grows through rough weather. It holds its ground in hedges. It hooks into other plants. It guards the stems that feed the bloom. And this changes the way the flower feels. The bloom may look delicate, but the plant beneath it is working. Its leaves are gathering light. Its roots are holding soil. Its canes are lifting upward. Its prickles are waiting along the stem. The rose is not fragile in the simple way it first appears. Its softness is real. Its sharpness is real too. And beneath the bloom, the whole plant is quietly built to endure. That endurance begins far below the bloom. A rose may draw attention with petals, scent, and sharp canes. But the flower is only the visible result of a much quieter system. Every large rose bloom depends on leaves that never become famous. It depends on roots hidden in soil. It depends on stems carrying water upward through the plant, hour after hour, without sound. The leaves do some of the most important work. A rose leaf is usually divided into smaller leaflets, often 5 or 7 on a single leaf stalk. Each leaflet has tiny jagged edges, like a small green saw. Across the surface are tiny openings called stomata. These openings are so small they cannot be seen with the unaided eye, but they allow carbon dioxide from the air to enter the leaf. Carbon dioxide is a gas that plants use as a raw material. Inside the leaf, sunlight powers a process called photosynthesis. Photosynthesis simply means making food with light. The leaf takes in carbon dioxide from the air and water from the roots. Then, using energy from sunlight, it turns them into sugars. Those sugars become fuel. They help the rose grow new leaves, repair damaged tissue, build stronger stems, and open flowers. A rose bloom may look like it appears suddenly, but it is paid for slowly. It is paid for by many days of leaves gathering light. This is why roses usually bloom best in bright sun. Many garden roses need about 6 hours of direct sunlight a day to flower well. Without enough light, the plant may still grow, but the stems can become weak and the blooms fewer. The flower depends on the leaf. The color above depends on the quiet green work below. Beneath the soil, the roots do a different kind of work. Rose roots spread outward and downward, anchoring the plant and searching for water. They also absorb minerals from the soil, including nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, and iron. These minerals are not food in the same way sugar is food. They are more like building materials and helpers. Nitrogen helps build leaves. Phosphorus supports roots and flowers. Potassium helps the plant move water and handle stress. If the soil is poor, compacted, or waterlogged, the rose can struggle even if the upper plant looks healthy for a while. The roots need air spaces in the soil. They need water, but not constant drowning. Good drainage matters because roots can rot when they sit too long in heavy, wet ground. This hidden root world explains why a rose bush cannot be judged only by its bloom. A perfect flower may be the final sign of a balanced system. Light above, water below, air in the soil, minerals moving through the roots, stems strong enough to hold the bloom upright. Inside the stem, water travels upward through tissue called xylem. Xylem is like a set of tiny tubes. It carries water and dissolved minerals from the roots toward the leaves and flowers. The movement is helped by evaporation from the leaves. As water vapor leaves through the stomata, more water is pulled upward from below, like a slow, invisible thread running through the plant. There is another transport tissue called phloem. Phloem carries sugars made in the leaves to other parts of the plant. So the rose is always moving things. Water rises. Sugar is shared. Minerals travel. New cells are built. A bud begins as a small green point, tight and closed. Then, if the plant has enough stored energy and current support, the bud swells. Sepals hold it like little green fingers. Petals grow inside. Pigments gather. Scent compounds begin to form. The bloom that seems so still is the result of constant movement. A rose in full flower may look like a pause, but inside it, water is flowing. Sugars are being used. Cells are stretching, and scent is preparing to lift into the air. This makes the rose feel more complete. The petals are not separate from the plant's labor. They are the visible edge of it. Every soft fold depends on green leaves. Every fragrant bloom depends on roots in dark soil. Every open flower depends on stems that quietly lift water against gravity. The eye follows the blossom because the blossom is bright. But the rose's beauty begins in places that never bloom. From those quiet systems of root, stem, and leaf, the rose begins to make something that cannot be seen. A scent. It does not sit on the flower like color. It rises from the petals into the air. It drifts away in pieces too small for the eye to follow. Rose fragrance comes from volatile organic compounds. Volatile means they evaporate easily. Organic means they are built around carbon, the same element found in living things. So when a rose smells sweet, fresh, spicy, or warm, it is releasing tiny carbon-based molecules into the air around it. These molecules are made inside the living tissues of the flower. They can pass from the petal surface into the open air. Then they float outward, carried by warmth, humidity, and the smallest movements of air. A rose in a still room may hold its scent close. A rose in a summer garden may send its scent farther, especially when the air is warm enough to help those molecules lift. This is why fragrance can seem to appear before the flower is touched. The rose is already reaching beyond itself. It is not moving like an animal, but its chemistry is traveling. One important rose scent molecule is phenylethyl alcohol. It gives a soft, sweet, classic rose note. It is one of the reasons rose fragrance can feel gentle and familiar, almost like the base of many old perfumes. Another compound, citronellol, has a fresher, slightly citrus-like smell. It can bring a clean, bright edge, like a hint of lemon leaf, softened into flower scent. Geraniol is another common rose fragrance molecule. It smells rosy, sweet, and floral. And it is also found in plants such as geraniums and citronella grass. Then there is damascenone. This molecule can be powerful even in extremely tiny amounts. It can add a deep, fruity, honey-like, almost rich quality to rose scent. A person does not usually smell these compounds separately. The nose receives them as a blend. Like notes in a quiet chord, they arrive together. One rose may lean sweet and powdery. Another may seem fruity, like apricot or raspberry. Another may have a spicy warmth, with hints that remind people of clove or tea. Some roses smell green, almost like crushed leaves. Some smell heavy and rich after rain. Some smell faint, even when the bloom is large and perfect. The scent depends on the rose's genetics. It depends on the age of the flower. It depends on how much sunlight the plant received, how warm the air is, and how quickly the scent molecules leave the petals. A bud that has only begun to open may smell different from a bloom that has been open for 2 days. Morning scent can be different from afternoon scent. In many flowers, scent release follows daily rhythms because pollinators are more active at certain times. The flower does not release fragrance only for human pleasure. Long before people leaned over roses in gardens, scent helped guide insects. A bee or beetle moving through the air may follow chemical traces toward a flower. The scent tells the insect that something useful may be nearby. Pollen, a landing place, a center worth visiting. In this way, rose fragrance is both beautiful and practical. It is an invitation written in air. When humans turn rose petals into perfume, rose water, or essential oil, they are trying to capture that invisible cloud. But true rose oil is difficult to make. The petals must be gathered carefully, often early in the morning, before too much fragrance is lost to heat. The scent compounds are delicate. They can shift, fade, or break down. This is part of why real rose fragrance has been prized for centuries. A small bottle can represent many thousands of flowers. Yet even without distillation, the living rose makes its own perfume quietly. No bottle, no fire, no machine. Just petals, warmth, air, and chemistry. A flower that seemed still has become active in a different way. Its roots held water. Its leaves made sugar. Its stem lifted moisture upward. And now its petals release tiny molecules into the world. Once that scent leaves the bloom, the rose is no longer only a shape in the garden. It becomes something carried through space, something that can reach a person before the petals are seen, something invisible, but unmistakably there. And yet, that invisible presence is never exactly the same from one rose to another. A rose does not have one single fragrance. It has many possible fragrances depending on the plant, the weather, the bloom, and the hour. 2 roses can grow beside each other in the same garden and still seem to speak in different scents. One may smell bright and lemony. One may smell soft and powdery. One may smell like warm honey. One may have a darker note, almost like ripe fruit or tea. This happens because each rose variety makes a different mixture of scent molecules. A variety, sometimes called a cultivar, is a type of rose selected and grown for certain traits. Those traits might include petal color, flower size, disease resistance, stem length, bloom shape, or fragrance. The old damask rose, often connected with rose oil and rose water, is famous for its rich perfume. Some tea roses carry a softer scent that can remind people of black tea, fruit, or warm leaves. Certain yellow roses may have a fresher smell, sometimes with notes that seem citrus-like or spicy. A pale pink rose and a dark red rose may look like simple color differences, But inside their petals, they may be making different chemical blends. The color comes from pigments. The scent comes from volatile compounds. They are separate parts of the flower's chemistry, but together, they shape the full experience. This is why a rose can surprise someone. A large, perfect-looking rose from a florist may have almost no scent. A smaller, less dramatic rose in an old garden may fill the air around it. For much of modern rose breeding, scent was not always the first goal. Growers often selected roses for long, straight stems, bright colors, heavy petal counts, repeat blooming, and the ability to last after cutting. A rose meant to travel in a refrigerated truck or stand in a vase for many days needs strength. It needs petals that hold together. It needs a stem that stays firm. It needs a bloom that opens slowly and looks clean under store lights. But fragrance can be harder to preserve when breeding for all of those traits. Some scent compounds are costly for the plant to make. Some fragrant roses have blooms that fade faster. Some old roses smell wonderful, but do not last as long after cutting. So over time, some modern roses became beautiful to look at, but quieter to smell. This does not mean all modern roses are scentless. Many are still richly fragrant, but it does explain why the nose sometimes expects perfume and finds only a faint trace. The weather also changes the rose. On a warm day, scent molecules evaporate more easily from the petals. Evaporate means they turn from liquid or solid form into vapor, so they can float in the air. A rose in the morning may smell fuller because the petals are fresh, the air is still, and the heat has not yet scattered the fragrance. By late afternoon, some blooms may smell weaker. Others may smell stronger as warmth helps their scent rise. Humidity matters too. Moist air can hold fragrance close, making a garden feel richer after gentle rain. Dry wind can carry scent away quickly. Even the age of the flower matters. A tight bud may hold its scent inside. A half-open bloom may release fragrance slowly. A fully open rose may give its strongest perfume for a short time before the petals begin to fade. Then the scent changes again. The fresh notes soften. The fruit notes may deepen. The petal edges may loosen and curl. The flower is still a rose, but its chemistry is moving through time. The scent is not a fixed object. It is a moment. It depends on sunlight from earlier days, water drawn through roots, sugar made by leaves, genes inherited through breeding, and air passing softly over petals. This is why rose fragrance can feel personal. No one smells every rose under the exact same conditions. The same flower can seem different in cool morning shade than it does in warm evening air. A rose beside a stone wall may hold warmth longer. A rose after rain may seem cleaner and more alive. A rose in a vase may slowly lose the wild edge it had outside. So the rose does not offer one scent to the world. It offers a changing signal. Part plant chemistry, part weather, part timing, part memory waiting to begin. And once that signal reaches the human body, the rose enters a deeper place, where scent is no longer only in the air, but connected to feeling, memory, and the quiet rooms of the mind. The scent reaches the human body quietly. A few invisible molecules drift into the nose. They touch a small patch of tissue high inside the nasal cavity, called the olfactory epithelium. Olfactory means related to smell. This patch contains millions of smell receptor cells. Each receptor responds to certain shapes of scent molecules, almost like a lock recognizing a key. When rose molecules, such as phenylethyl alcohol, geraniol, citronellol, or damascenone, enter the nose, they do not arrive as words. They arrive as signals. Those signals travel to the olfactory bulb, a small structure near the front of the brain that helps process smell. From there, scent has a special path. It connects closely with areas involved in memory and emotion, including the hippocampus and the amygdala. The hippocampus helps form and recall memories. The amygdala helps attach emotional weight to experience. This is one reason a smell can feel so immediate. A rose can bring back a place before a person has time to explain why. It may bring back a grandmother's garden, a wedding table with white cloth and glass vases, a funeral arrangement in a quiet room, a perfume worn by someone years ago, a summer walkway after rain, a childhood yard where rose bushes leaned over a fence. The scent does not need to tell the whole story. It only needs to open the door. Sight and sound often pass through more layers of interpretation. A person sees a rose and thinks, "That is a rose." A person hears a song and may name the melody. But smell can move faster than language. It can create recognition before the words arrive. The body reacts first. Then the explanation follows. This is why rose scent can feel strangely personal. Two people may smell the same flower and remember completely different things. For one person, a red rose may feel romantic. For another, it may feel formal and distant. For another, it may carry the memory of a hospital room, a birthday, a garden gate, or a small bottle of perfume on a dresser. The same molecules can enter different lives and awaken different scenes. The rose has no way of knowing what it will call back. It simply releases its scent. The human body does the rest. This connection between smell and memory is sometimes called the Proust effect, named after the French writer Marcel Proust, who described a flood of memory rising from the taste and smell of a small cake dipped in tea. The idea is simple. A scent or flavor can unlock a vivid memory with surprising force. Not because the scent contains the memory, but because the brain has linked them together. At some earlier moment, the rose was present. Maybe on a table, maybe in a garden, maybe pressed into a book, maybe carried in someone's hand. The scent, the place, the light, and the feeling became tied together. Years later, a similar scent returns, and the old scene rises, soft but clear. This makes the rose different from an object that is only seen. Its scent can move through time inside the listener. A rose can be fresh in the room and ancient in memory at the same time. It can be blooming now, while also carrying the feeling of another season. The flower's chemistry becomes part of human experience, not by magic, by biology, by receptors in the nose, by signals moving through nerves, by memory pathways that store emotion alongside sensation. This is why rose perfume has held such power across cultures. A bottle of rose oil is not only a fragrance. It is an attempt to preserve the moment when petals release their invisible cloud. A dried rose in an old book may lose much of its color, but sometimes a faint scent remains. Even that faintness can be enough. The rose becomes powerful not only because of what it is. It becomes powerful because of what the body does with it. The flower makes scent for the living world around it. But once that scent reaches a person, it can become memory, feeling, and meaning. And before humans ever turned roses into symbols, insects were already following those same invisible signals through the air. Before roses carried human memory, they carried signals through the garden air. Those signals were not first meant for people. They were meant for small moving bodies, for bees, for beetles, for flies, for insects crossing sunlight in short, careful flights. A wild rose does not need to explain itself. Its open shape, pale petals, yellow center, and rising scent all work together. To a human eye, this may look like beauty. To an insect, it can mean food. Many wild roses produce little or no nectar, but they often offer pollen. Pollen is rich in protein and fats, and bees collect it to feed their young. In a simple 5-petaled rose, the pollen is easy to find. The stamens sit exposed in the center, dusted with yellow grains. A bee can land on the petals, step into the middle, and brush against the stamens as it moves. Some pollen sticks to the fine hairs on the bee's body. When that bee visits another rose, some of those grains may rub onto the flower's female parts. That movement is pollination. Pollination is how many flowering plants begin the process of making seeds. The rose is rooted in place. It cannot walk its pollen to another bloom, so it uses visitors. Color helps guide them. Many wild roses are white, pink, or soft red, colors that can stand out against green leaves. The yellow center creates a clear target. Even if the flower looks simple, the contrast is useful. A bee moving quickly through a hedgerow can notice the bright center and land where the pollen waits. Scent helps too. Rose fragrance does not drift into the air only to please people walking nearby. It can act as a chemical signal. Insects have strong smell systems. A bee uses its antennae to detect scent molecules. Those antennae are not just feelers. They are sensitive organs covered with tiny structures that can receive chemical information from the air. To a bee, a rose's scent may help mark the location of a flower worth visiting. This does not mean the rose is thinking. It means that over long periods of time, flowers that attracted useful visitors were more likely to set seed. Plants with colors, shapes, and scents that worked well with insects left more descendants. Slowly, the flower and the pollinator became linked. This is one of the quiet forces behind flowering plants. The bloom is not only a display, it is a meeting place. The insect comes for pollen. The plant gains a chance to move its pollen to another flower. Both lives touch for a moment, then separate. A beetle may crawl across the center. A fly may pause in the sun. A bee may gather pollen into small baskets on its back legs. The rose remains still, but the work continues around it. This makes human beauty feel different. When people admire a rose, they are often responding to features that had older purposes. The open shape, the color against the leaves, the rich center, the fragrance moving through the air. These are not empty decorations. They are signals shaped by reproduction. A rose can seem graceful because its parts are arranged with living purpose. The petals make the flower visible. The scent makes it findable. The pollen makes it rewarding. The center makes the path clear. In modern double roses, this older system can be partly hidden. Extra petals may cover the stamens. The bloom may be fuller for the human eye, but less useful for a bee. Some highly bred roses offer little accessible pollen. Others still welcome insects, especially when the center remains open. This difference shows how the rose has lived between two audiences. The insect audience, which follows food and scent, and the human audience, which follows color, feeling, memory, and form. But the insect audience came first. Long before roses were carried into ceremonies or painted in books, small pollinators were already moving through their open centers. Before roses meant love, they meant pollen. Before roses were symbols, they were signals. And after that small meeting between flower and insect, the rose could begin another quiet transformation. The petals would not last forever. The scent would fade. But if pollination succeeded, the flower would start turning toward fruit, seed, and the next hidden stage of its life. The flower does not end when its petals loosen. It only changes form. After a rose has opened, after pollen has been moved, and after the soft petals begin to fade, the base of the flower may slowly swell. What was once hidden beneath the bloom becomes more visible. The rose begins forming a hip. A rose hip is the seed-bearing structure that develops after pollination. It is not the petal. It is not the stem. It forms from the lower part of the flower where the future seeds are held. At first, it may look small and green. Then, as weeks pass, it can grow rounder, firmer, and brighter. Many rose hips turn red, orange, or deep reddish-brown by late summer or autumn. On a wild rose, they can look like tiny lanterns hanging among the leaves. On some species, they are small and oval. On others, they are large, round, and almost tomato-like. The rugosa rose, Rosa rugosa, often forms big red hips that stand out clearly against its wrinkled green leaves. The dog rose, Rosa canina, usually forms smoother oval hips that glow red along hedgerows in Europe and Western Asia. Inside each hip are small hard seeds. Botanically, these seed-like structures are called achenes. An achene is a tiny dry fruit that holds one seed. In roses, many achenes sit together inside the fleshy hip. So the part people call a rose hip is really a protective container around many small future plants. This changes the feeling of the fading rose. The petals fall away, but the plant has not failed. The flower has done what it came to do. It has opened. It has offered color, scent, and pollen. And now the plant shifts its energy towards seeds. For birds and mammals, rose hips can be food. In autumn and winter, when many flowers are gone, hips can remain on the canes. Birds may peck at them. Small mammals may eat them. Larger animals may browse them too. When animals eat the fleshy part, the seeds can pass through their digestive system and later fall somewhere else. This can help roses spread beyond the original plant. A rose rooted in one place uses animals to carry its future farther away. The hip becomes a quiet exchange. The animal receives food. The rose receives movement. Humans have also noticed rose hips for a long time. They have been used in teas, syrups, jams, jellies, soups, and traditional remedies. Their taste can be tart and fruity, sometimes compared to cranberry or apple skin. One reason rose hips became valuable is their vitamin C. Vitamin C is a nutrient the human body needs for healthy skin, blood vessels, and healing. During World War II, when citrus fruits were harder to get in Britain, rose hips were gathered and made into syrup, especially for children. The hips of wild roses became a practical source of nutrition in a difficult time. That history gives the rose another layer. The same plant that appears in love poems and wedding bouquets also helped fill bottles of syrup during wartime rationing. The rose can be delicate in one setting and useful in another. A bloom may last only a short time, but a hip can stay on the plant for months. It can brighten a winter branch after the leaves are gone. It can feed a bird on a cold morning. It can hold seeds through weather that would destroy petals in a day. This is one of the quiet lessons of the rose. The flower is not the whole life. It is only the visible opening of a longer process. The petals draw attention. The scent rises. The insect visits. The center receives pollen. Then the bloom fades, and the hip begins to carry the result. What looks like an ending is really a transfer. Softness becomes seed. Color becomes food. A brief flower becomes a slower kind of promise. And once the rose is seen this way, not as a single bloom but as a cycle, it belongs less to the vase and more to the living landscape around it. Seen this way, the rose begins to leave the vase behind. It belongs not only on a table, but in hedgerows, field edges, dunes, riverbanks, and open ground where the soil is uneven and the wind has room to move. A cut rose in a vase is quiet and separate. Its stem has been trimmed. Its roots are gone. Its bloom is held for a short time in water. But a wild rose bush is still connected to everything around it. The roots grip the soil. The canes arch outward. The leaves make sugar in the sun. The flowers feed insects. The hips feed birds and mammals after the petals are gone. In the wild, roses often grow in places where one kind of landscape changes into another. A forest edge, a meadow border, a roadside bank, a gap in a hedge. These edge places are useful because they often receive more sunlight than deep forest, but still offer shelter from taller plants nearby. Many roses are shrubs, and shrubs do well in these middle spaces. They do not need to stand as tall as trees. They do not disappear each year like soft annual flowers. They hold their woody stems through the seasons and return with new leaves when warmth comes back. A wild rose thicket can be messy compared with a garden bed. The canes may cross over one another. The prickles may catch dead leaves and bits of grass. The flowers may open at different angles, some facing the path, others hidden inside the green tangle. But that messiness is part of its value. Small birds can shelter inside the thorny growth. The prickles make it harder for larger animals to push through. A sparrow, wren, or finch can move among the stems more easily than a fox or cat. In spring and early summer, insects visit the flowers for pollen. Bees crawl over the yellow centers of open wild roses. Beetles may linger there too, moving slowly through the stamens. Later in the year, the same bush can hold red or orange hips. Those hips can remain after leaves fall, making bright points of color along brown stems. A bird landing on the cane in autumn may find food where the flower once was. The rose has changed from a pollinator plant into a winter food source. This is why the living rosebush feels so different from the cut flower. A cut rose is a moment. A wild rose is a small system. It holds soil with roots. It slows movement with prickled canes. It gives pollen to insects. It gives hips to animals. It creates shelter with tangled stems. Even its fallen leaves return material to the soil as they break down. Some roses are especially good at surviving rough places. The rugosa rose, native to Eastern Asia, can grow along sandy coasts where salt spray, wind, and poor soil make life difficult. Its leaves are thick and wrinkled, and its large hips can turn a strong red in late summer. Because it is so hardy, it has also spread beyond gardens in some regions and become invasive, which means it can grow so strongly that it crowds out native plants. That is another reminder that roses are not weak. They can be persistent. They can be aggressive. They can change the land around them. The dog rose, Rosa canina, is another wide-ranging wild rose. In parts of Europe, it threads through hedgerows and country lanes, opening pale pink or white flowers in summer and carrying red hips into colder months. It is less polished than a florist rose, but more alive in its surroundings. A garden rose may be admired for one perfect bloom. A wild rose is admired more slowly, by watching what visits it, by noticing what it feeds, by seeing how it holds its place through wind, rain, and winter. Once roses are seen this way, it becomes easier to understand why humans wanted them nearby. They were not only beautiful, they were useful, fragrant, protective, seasonal, and full of signs that life was returning again. And when a plant can mark the return of life, people begin to notice it differently. A wild rose at the edge of a field is useful to birds, bees, and small animals. But to humans, it offered something else too. It offered beauty that could be brought closer. A rosebush near a home meant fragrance near the doorway. It meant petals that could be gathered. It meant hips that could be used after the flowers were gone. It meant a plant that changed with the season, bloomed for a short time, and left behind something that could still be kept. Roses have been cultivated for thousands of years. To cultivate a plant means to grow it with human care. People choose where it grows. They water it. They protect it. They take cuttings. They save seeds. They choose the plants that smell better, bloom more strongly, or look more beautiful. Over time, those choices reshape the plant. The rose did not become a garden flower all at once. It crossed slowly from the wild edge into human spaces. Ancient gardens were not always like modern gardens, made only for beauty. Many early gardens were practical. They held herbs, fruit trees, medicine plants, shade plants, and flowers used in ceremony. A rose could belong to all of those worlds at once. Its petals could be admired. Its scent could be used in oils or scented water. Its hips could become food or medicine. Its bloom could be placed in a ritual, a feast, a room, or a grave. This made the rose unusually valuable. It was not only pretty, it was useful in ways that touched the body and the senses. In ancient China, roses were grown in gardens long before modern European roses existed. Chinese garden roses later became especially important because some of them could bloom more than once in a season. That trait, called repeat blooming, would eventually change rose breeding around the world. In the Middle East, fragrant roses became treasured for rose water and perfume. In Mediterranean lands, roses were grown for petals, fragrance, decoration, and celebration. By the time Greek and Roman writers described roses, the flower already carried layers of use and meaning. People had begun to see roses as more than shrubs. They were garden companions. They were offerings. They were signs of wealth, care, and refinement. A wild rose growing in a hedge has its own life. A cultivated rose begins to share its life with human habit. It is planted near paths where people walk. It is pruned so air can pass through the canes. It is watered in dry weather. It is watched for buds. When it opens, someone notices. That act of noticing becomes part of the plant's story. The rose enters daily life through small, repeated gestures. A gardener checks the leaves. A child smells a bloom. A cook gathers petals. A healer dries hips. A family plants a rose near a wall and sees it return each year. The plant remains biological, but it also becomes personal. Cultivation also changed the rose physically. If a rose had a fuller bloom, people might keep it. If a rose had a stronger scent, they might grow more of it. If a rose survived winter better, it might be shared with neighbors. If a rose produced unusual color, it might be treasured. This is how human preference becomes part of plant history. The rose still needs sunlight, water, roots, leaves, and soil. But now, it also carries human choices inside its form. A garden rose is a meeting point. Wild survival on one side, human desire on the other. The prickles still protect the stem. The leaves still make sugar. The flower still opens around reproductive parts. But around that living structure, people begin adding meaning. They give the rose to someone. They plant it for remembrance. They float its petals in water. They use its scent to mark a room, a body, a ceremony, or a day. The moment roses entered gardens, their story widened. They were no longer only plants in the landscape. They became part of culture. And in the ancient world, that culture would turn the rose into something even larger than a flower. In the ancient world, the rose became more than a plant people tended. It became a flower people placed around the most important moments of life. The Greeks connected roses with beauty, love, and divine presence. In later Greek stories, the rose was linked with Aphrodite, the goddess of love and desire. To the Romans, Aphrodite became Venus, and roses followed her into Roman art, gardens, festivals, and private rooms. The flower's softness made it easy to connect with beauty. Its fragrance made it feel rich and almost sacred. Its short bloom made it feel precious. A rose did not last like stone or bronze. It opened, scented the air, and faded. That briefness gave it emotional weight. In Greece and Rome, roses were used in garlands, perfumes, bathing, feasts, and rituals. A garland is a chain or crown made from flowers, leaves, or stems. People could wear rose garlands at celebrations, recline near rose petals at banquets, or scent their skin with rose-infused oil. Oil was important because fragrance clings to oil better than water. Fresh petals could be steeped into olive oil or other oils, allowing some of the scent to remain after the flower itself had faded. This mattered in a world without modern perfume bottles, air fresheners, or scented soaps. To fill a room with rose scent took real petals, real labor, and real cost. In ancient Rome, wealthy people sometimes used roses in ways that showed status. Petals could be scattered across dining couches and floors. Rose wreaths could be worn during banquets. Scented oils could be rubbed onto the body after bathing. Roman baths were not just places to wash. They were social spaces, with warm rooms, cold pools, exercise areas, and conversation. A floral scent on the skin could mark cleanliness, wealth, and pleasure all at once. Roman writers also noticed roses as useful plants. Pliny the Elder, writing in the 1st century CE, described roses in his large work on natural history. He wrote about their varieties, their fragrance, and their uses in medicine and daily life. To ancient people, the rose was not separated into science, beauty, and health the way we often separate things now. It could belong to all three. A flower could be admired, smelled, worn, offered, and used. But roses were not only flowers of pleasure, they also belonged to mourning. In the Roman world, roses were used in ceremonies for the dead. There was a festival known as Rosalia, often held in May or June, when roses were placed at tombs or used to honor those who had died. The timing made sense. Late spring and early summer were seasons when roses bloomed heavily in many Mediterranean places. So the flower that appeared at feasts could also appear at graves. That may seem like a contrast, but for roses it felt natural. A bloom that was beautiful and temporary could speak gently about a life that had passed. The same petals that marked celebration could also mark memory. The rose moved easily between joy and grief because it already held both qualities in its body. It was bright, but it faded. It was soft, but it grew on sharp stems. It smelled sweet, but only for a short time. The ancient world understood that kind of meaning. People did not need the rose to say only one thing. It could stand for love in one room, luxury in another, a goddess in a temple, a grave in a quiet burial place outside the city, a bowl of scented water, a crown of petals, a medicine for the body, a sign of honor laid down for the dead. This is part of why the rose stayed so deeply rooted in human culture. It could move through many kinds of feeling without losing itself. It was specific enough to be recognized and flexible enough to gather new meanings. In Greece and Rome, the rose became one of the rare plants that could belong to beauty, pleasure, sacred stories, and sorrow at the same time. And from those ancient meanings, one connection would grow especially strong. The rose would become the flower people reached for when ordinary words did not feel soft enough for love. When ordinary words did not feel soft enough, the rose offered another language. It did not explain love. It held a shape people could understand without much speech. A rose combines several senses at once. The eye sees color. The hand imagines softness. The nose receives scent. The body notices the stem. The flower looks open and guarded at the same time. That mixture made it easy for people to connect roses with affection, longing, beauty, and care. A red rose, especially, became powerful because red is already a color the body notices quickly. It is the color of blood, warmth, ripe fruit, firelight, and flushed skin. In flowers, red pigments often come from compounds called anthocyanins. Anthocyanins are plant pigments that can create red, purple, or blue tones, depending on the chemistry inside the petal. In roses, these pigments can make petals look deep crimson, soft pink, burgundy, or almost purple. To human eyes, those colors can feel warm and alive. A red rose does not need to be large to be noticed. Even one bloom on a dark green stem can draw attention from across a room. But color alone did not make the rose the flower of love. Its shape mattered too. Many roses have a balanced form, with petals arranged around a center. In some garden roses, the petals fold inward in a spiral. In others, they open into a cup. This rounded shape can feel gentle and complete. It holds light softly. It gives the eye a place to rest. The texture adds another layer. Rose petals are thin, but not flat. They have a soft surface, sometimes almost velvety, because tiny cells on the petal surface scatter light and create a smooth look. A fresh petal can bruise easily. It can curl at the edge. It can fade at the tip before the rest of the bloom is gone. That fragility matters. A rose is not a stone carving of beauty. It is living beauty with a short clock inside it. Many cut roses last about 1 week in a vase, sometimes longer. With clean water, cool temperatures, and trimmed stems. On the plant, an individual bloom may last only several days, depending on the variety and weather. Heat can shorten its life. Heavy rain can damage the petals. Dry wind can loosen them. The flower is real, but temporary. That made it a natural symbol for feelings people wanted to honor while they were still present. A rose says beauty is here now. It may not stay forever. That is part of its power. Its scent deepens the meaning. Rose fragrance can include sweet floral notes, citrus notes, honey-like notes, and darker fruit notes. The scent surrounds the bloom without being visible. It reaches a person before the flower is touched. This made roses useful in love poetry, perfume, gifts, and private rooms, because scent feels close and personal. A rose can change the air around it. It can make a place feel marked by care. But then there are the prickles. The same stem that carries the bloom can catch the skin. The same plant that offers softness also warns the hand to move gently. This contrast is one reason the rose became more than a simple symbol of sweetness. Love in human life is often tender, but not always easy. It can be joyful and fragile. It can bring closeness and risk. It can be remembered with warmth or with ache. The rose gave people a way to hold those opposites in one image. A flower without sharpness might have felt too simple. A sharp plant without bloom might have felt too harsh. But the rose holds both. Soft petals above, prickles below, fragrance in the air, a stem that must be handled with care. This is why roses appear in songs, paintings, letters, gardens, and ceremonies across so many centuries. They give form to a feeling that can be difficult to say plainly. And the connection did not come from one single story or one single culture. It came from the plant itself, from the way it looks, the way it smells, the way it fades, the way it protects itself. The rose became the flower of love because its body already carried the pattern. Beauty and risk, softness and defense. A bright opening, followed by a quiet fading. And once people saw that the rose could carry feeling, they began giving it even more meanings, including meanings kept hidden, private, and unspoken. And once people trusted the rose to carry feeling, they also trusted it to carry silence. The rose did not only speak of love, it also became a sign of what should not be repeated. A private word, a quiet meeting, a promise held behind closed doors. This meaning appears in the old phrase, sub rosa. It means under the rose. The phrase comes from Latin, and over time it became connected with secrecy and confidential speech. If something was said sub rosa, it was meant to stay private. It was not for the street, the market, the court, or the wider world. It belonged under the rose. The exact path of this symbol is old and layered, but one important connection comes from classical stories. In some traditions, the rose was linked with Harpocrates, a god of silence. Harpocrates was often shown with a finger near his lips, the gesture humans still recognize as quiet. In Roman and later European symbolism, the rose became tied to that same idea. Not everything beautiful needed to be announced. Not everything spoken needed to travel farther. A rose could mark the boundary between what was shared and what was kept. Over the centuries, roses appeared in places where privacy mattered. A rose carved into a ceiling could suggest that the words spoken beneath it should remain confidential. In some dining rooms, council chambers, or private meeting spaces, a painted or carved rose above the table carried a quiet message. The room itself was listening, but the room would not tell. This is a very different rose from the one held in a lover's hand. It is not red with feeling. It is still, watchful, and almost architectural. A carved rose in wood or plaster does not release fragrance. It does not fade in a vase. It does not drop petals on a table. But it carries the idea of the living flower into a fixed shape. The bloom becomes a symbol placed above human speech. Its petals become a kind of seal. This use of the rose also appeared in Christian churches and medieval art. Large circular windows in churches were called rose windows because their stone patterns opened outward like petals. These windows were not about secrecy in the same simple way as sub rosa, but they show how deeply the rose shape entered sacred and symbolic spaces. A rose could become architecture. A rose could become a pattern of light. A rose could become a sign that meaning was layered, not always said plainly. In private symbolism, that mattered. The rose already had a body made of layers. Petals fold over petals. The center may be hidden. A tight rosebud can hold its shape closed for days before opening. Even the plant itself seems to understand concealment. The most fragrant part is invisible. The future seeds are hidden inside the flower base. The roots work underground. The sharp prickles wait along the stem. So when humans used the rose as a symbol of secrecy, they were not forcing an unnatural meaning onto it. They were noticing something already present. A rose reveals and hides at the same time. It opens, but not all at once. It gives scent, but not shape to that scent. It draws attention, but keeps its center guarded, especially in full double blooms where petals fold inward like a quiet chamber. This made the rose useful for meanings beyond romance. It could stand for silence, for trust, for private grief, for affection never spoken aloud, for a promise kept inside the chest. In this way, the rose became a flower of inner rooms. It belonged not only to gardens and ceremonies, but to conversations that ended at the door. Its meaning softened the act of secrecy. A lock can seem harsh. A sealed letter can seem formal. But a rose suggests privacy with tenderness. It says, some things are held, not hidden out of fear, but protected because they are delicate. And once people began reading the rose this way, they could read even more into it. Not only the flower itself, but its color. A red rose could speak differently from a white one. A yellow rose could shift meaning from warmth to warning, depending on the time and place. The rose had become a quiet language, and every shade began to carry its own whispered message. The rose had become a quiet language, and color gave that language more shades. A red rose came to carry the strongest connection with romantic love. Its color is hard to ignore. Deep red petals can look warm, full, and alive against dark green leaves. Over time, red roses became linked with desire, devotion, passion, and the kind of feeling people often find difficult to say directly. A single red rose can seem simple, but it carries centuries of human habit behind it. The eye sees color first. Then memory and culture begin adding meaning. White roses moved through a different emotional world. In some places, they became linked with purity, innocence, reverence, and new beginnings. That is why white roses often appear in weddings. Their pale petals can suggest quietness, openness, and a kind of clean beauty. But white roses have also been used in mourning. Their stillness can feel peaceful beside grief. Placed near a grave, in a funeral arrangement, or in a church, a white rose can speak softly of respect and remembrance. So the same color can hold more than one meaning. It depends on the room. It depends on the ceremony. It depends on the hands that carry it. Yellow roses have had an even more shifting history. Today, they are often connected with friendship, warmth, cheerfulness, and care that does not have to be romantic. Their color can feel like sunlight. A yellow rose on a table can brighten a room in a very different way from a red one. But in some older European flower language, yellow roses could also suggest jealousy, fading affection, or uncertainty. This shows how rose meanings were never fixed by the flower alone. They were shaped by culture. A color that felt joyful in one time or place could feel uneasy in another. The rose became a language, but like any language, its words could change. The science of rose color begins inside the petals. Red, pink, purple, and some darker rose shades often come from pigments called anthocyanins. Anthocyanins are natural plant pigments that can create red, purple, or bluish tones in many fruits and flowers. They are also found in things like cherries, blueberries, grapes, and autumn leaves. In roses, they help create the rich range from soft blush pink to deep crimson. Yellow and orange roses often get their color from carotenoids. Carotenoids are pigments that can make plants look yellow, orange, or golden. They are also found in carrots, pumpkins, and marigolds. So when a yellow rose glows in afternoon light, part of that glow comes from pigment chemistry inside the petal cells. Color is not painted onto the surface. It is built into the living tissue. Each petal holds tiny structures and chemical compounds that absorb some wavelengths of light and reflect others. The reflected light reaches the eye. The brain turns it into color. Then culture turns that color into meaning. This is one reason roses feel so layered. A red rose is physics, biology, and emotion at the same time. Light strikes the petal. Pigments shape what returns. The eye receives the signal. The human story begins. But there is one rose color nature has resisted for a very long time. Blue. True blue roses do not occur naturally in the usual garden sense. Roses do not naturally make the main blue pigment found in many other blue flowers, a pigment connected with delphinidine. For centuries, gardeners dreamed of blue roses, but ordinary breeding could not simply pull a true blue from normal rose genetics. Breeders could create lavender, mauve, grayish purple, or cool pink roses. Some looked almost blue in soft light, but they were not the clear blue of a forget-me-not or cornflower. The blue rose became a symbol of the impossible, something desired, imagined, and almost reached, but never easily found. Modern science has tried to bring roses closer to blue through genetic work, by adding pigment pathways roses did not naturally have. Even then, the results tend to lean lavender or violet rather than pure sky blue. The rose keeps some limits of its own, and those limits made people want even more. Once humans learned to read color as feeling, they also began trying to create new colors, stronger colors, stranger colors, and flowers that nature had not offered so easily. The rose was no longer only being interpreted, it was being redesigned. The redesign was slow, patient, and done with great attention. Not in one garden, not by one person, but across centuries, across countries, and across thousands of careful choices. A gardener would notice one bush that bloomed more heavily, another that carried a deeper color, another that survived winter better, another that gave a stronger fragrance, another that opened with more petals than the rest. Those plants were saved, divided, crossed, and shared. A rose cutting could move from one garden to another. Seeds could be planted and watched. Most seedlings might be ordinary, but once in a while, one would open with something new. A fuller shape, a strange color, a better scent, a longer season of bloom. This is how human preference became written into the rose. Wild roses often bloom once a year. They open in spring or early summer, feed insects, form hips, and then move on with the season. But many gardeners wanted roses that returned. A rose that bloomed only once was beautiful but brief. A rose that bloomed again felt almost like a gift repeated. This is where Chinese roses became especially important. Roses from China had traits that many European roses did not have in the same way. Some could bloom repeatedly through the growing season. This repeat blooming changed rose history. When Chinese roses were brought into European breeding lines, especially from the late 1700s into the 1800s, breeders began creating roses that could flower more than once instead of giving only one main display. That one trait changed the garden. A rose bush no longer had to be a short summer event. It could return in waves. A first flush of bloom, a pause, then more buds, more petals, more scent, more color. At the same time, breeders worked on form. They wanted flowers with more petals, tighter centers, stronger stems, and colors that held longer. Some roses became full and round, like old cabbage roses. Others became taller and more pointed. The hybrid tea rose became one of the most important modern forms. A famous early hybrid tea rose called La France appeared in 1867, and many rose historians treat it as a turning point between old garden roses and modern roses. Hybrid tea roses often produced large flowers on long stems, with a high center and petals that opened in a controlled spiral. This is the shape many people picture when they imagine a florist rose. One bloom held above the leaves, a long stem, a pointed bud, a flower that looks almost arranged before it fully opens. That shape did not become common by accident. It came from breeding. People wanted roses that could be cut and carried, roses that could stand upright in a vase, roses that could travel, roses that could bloom again after being pruned, roses that looked clean, balanced, and dramatic. Later, breeders also selected for disease resistance. Roses can suffer from black spot, powdery mildew, rust, and other problems that mark the leaves or weaken the plant. A rose that looks beautiful but loses its leaves too easily is harder to grow. So modern breeding has often tried to combine beauty with strength. A fuller bloom, but also a healthier shrub. A strong color, but also better survival in heat, rain, or cold. A long vase life, but also a plant that can keep producing. This changed what roses became in human hands. The rose was still a living plant with roots, leaves, xylem, pollen, and hips. But it also became a record of what people kept asking from it. More petals, more color, more fragrance, more bloom time, more control, more perfection. A wild rose opens simply and gives itself to the season. A modern rose often carries centuries of selection in one flower. Its shape may hold the patience of gardeners who waited years for a single promising seedling. Its color may come from long chains of crossing and choosing. Its long stem may reflect the needs of markets, bouquets, and vases. The modern rose is not just nature. It is nature answered by human longing. And once people learn to reshape the rose itself, they also learn to carry its fragrance farther, into oils, waters, trade routes, and bottles that tried to hold the scent of petals after the bloom was gone. The scent of petals did not stay in gardens. Once people learned that rose fragrance could be captured, even faintly, the rose began to travel in another form. Not as a shrub, not as a bloom, but as oil, water, and perfume. Among the most treasured fragrant roses is the damask rose, often known as Rosa damascena. Its flowers are usually pink, soft, and strongly scented. The name Damask is connected with Damascus, the ancient city in Syria, though the rose's deeper history is tangled through trade, gardens, and migration across Western Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. Damask roses became especially important because their scent could be used to make rose oil and rose water. Rose water is made by distilling petals with water. Distilling means heating a material, so its fragrant vapor rises, then cooling that vapor so it turns back into liquid. The result is water that carries some of the rose's scent. Rose oil, sometimes called attar of rose, is far more concentrated. It holds the fragrance compounds from many petals in a tiny amount of oil. This process made the rose portable. A fresh bloom fades quickly. A bottle of rose water or rose oil can travel across mountains, deserts, seas, and markets. In Persia and across the wider Middle East, rose water became part of daily life, medicine, cooking, ceremony, and devotion. It could scent sweets. It could be sprinkled in rooms. It could be used to wash hands. It could be offered in religious settings. In some places, rose water was added to syrups, pastries, rice dishes, and drinks, giving food a soft floral note that carried the garden into the meal. The rose became something people could taste, wear, and breathe. Turkey became known for rose growing and rose oil production, especially in regions where climate and soil suited fragrant roses. Bulgaria also became famous for roses, especially the Rose Valley near Kazanlak, where fields of damask roses have been cultivated for centuries. In that valley, the air in late spring and early summer can fill with rose scent when the flowers are harvested. Workers traditionally gather petals early in the morning, often before the sun grows hot. That timing matters because rose scent compounds are delicate. Heat can cause some of the fragrance to evaporate before the petals are processed. A rose field at dawn is not only beautiful, it is practical. Cool air helps protect the scent. The work is slow and careful. Petals must be picked by hand because the flowers are fragile. A single rose may offer only a small handful of petals, and it takes an enormous number of petals to make a small amount of true rose oil. Thousands of pounds of petals may produce only a pound or so of oil, depending on the roses and the distillation method. That is why real rose oil has always been precious. Its value is not only in the scent, it is in the labor, the land, the water, the dawn harvest, the copper stills, the many flowers disappearing into one small bottle. In Europe, rose fragrance entered perfumery, medicine, cosmetics, and courtly life. In monasteries and apothecaries, rose preparations were used in remedies and soothing waters. An apothecary was an early form of pharmacist. someone who prepared medicines from plants, minerals, and other materials. Rosewater was gentle enough to be used on the skin, fragrant enough for rooms and linens, and symbolic enough for sacred and social rituals. The living flower had become a substance people could keep. But even captured rose scent is never exactly the same as the bloom. A rose on the stem carries warmth, air, leaves, soil, and the moment of opening. Rose oil carries a concentrated memory of that flower, but not the whole plant. Still, humans kept trying to hold it. The scent that began as chemistry inside petals became trade, medicine, luxury, ritual, and art. And the more people tried to preserve the rose, the more clearly they revealed something fragile underneath. A perfect rose is never as effortless as it appears. A perfect rose can make its own labor disappear. In a bouquet, the stem is clean. The leaves are trimmed. The petals open in a smooth shape. The flower looks calm, as if it arrived in that form without struggle. But the living rose is vulnerable in many quiet ways. A rose bush can be strong, old, and well defended, yet still suffer from small forces that touch the leaves, stems, roots, and buds. One of the most common rose diseases is black spot. It appears as dark round marks on the leaves, often with yellowing around them. The fungus spreads more easily when leaves stay wet, especially in warm, humid weather. A rose with black spot may drop many of its leaves before the season is over. Without enough healthy leaves, the plant makes less sugar through photosynthesis. The bloom above weakens because the green work below has been interrupted. Powdery mildew is another common problem. It can look like a pale white dust on leaves, stems, and buds. It often appears when days are warm, nights are cooler, and air does not move well through the plant. Good airflow matters because still, damp air can help disease settle and spread. Rust can mark rose leaves too. It often appears as orange or rusty spots, usually on the undersides of leaves. These diseases are small to the eye, but they can change the whole plant. A rose does not only need beauty, it needs clean leaves. It needs air moving between the canes. It needs enough sunlight to dry moisture and feed growth. Many roses bloom best with about 6 hours of direct sun each day. Too much shade can lead to weak stems, fewer flowers, and more disease. The roots need care as well. Roses generally prefer soil that drains well. Drainage means water can move through the soil instead of sitting around the roots for too long. If the soil stays heavy and wet, roots can struggle for oxygen. If the soil dries too deeply, the plant may drop buds or produce smaller blooms. Even watering has to be balanced. A rose needs moisture, but not drowning. It needs feeding, but not too much soft growth that pests can easily attack. Aphids are one of the small insects that often gather on roses. They are soft-bodied insects, sometimes green, black, or pinkish, and they feed by sucking sap from tender new growth. They often cluster around young buds and fresh stems. A few aphids may not ruin a plant, but many can weaken new growth and leave behind sticky residue called honeydew. That sticky surface can attract other problems. Even the bud, before it opens, is a vulnerable place. Rain can bruise petals before they unfold. Heat can cause petals to open too quickly. Wind can dry the edges. Cold nights can damage tender new growth. The rose that finally appears as one smooth bloom has passed through many risks. This is even more true for roses grown for bouquets. A florist's rose may look effortless, but behind it is a chain of human work. Growers select varieties with long stems, strong petals, and good vase life. Plants may be grown in fields or greenhouses where temperature, light, water, and humidity are watched closely. Stems are cut at the right stage, often when the bud is partly open but not fully loose. Then the roses are cooled, packed, shipped, unpacked, trimmed, stored, and arranged. A bloom on a table may have traveled hundreds or even thousands of miles. Its calm appearance can hide greenhouses, workers, refrigerated rooms, trucks, boxes, water buckets, pruning shears, and careful timing. Even in a small home garden, a good rose often reflects quiet attention. Dead flowers are removed so the plant can direct energy into new growth. Crowded canes are pruned to let air and light reach the center. Fallen diseased leaves may be cleared away. Mulch can help hold moisture and protect roots. The rose is beautiful, but not careless. Its beauty depends on conditions: sunlight, soil, water, air, health, timing. The more perfect a rose appears, the more invisible effort it may contain. And this gives the flower another kind of meaning. Its perfection is not proof that it is untouched. It is proof that many fragile things aligned long enough for the bloom to open. When many fragile things align, the rose opens. And perhaps that is why it has stayed with people for so long. A rose is never only one thing. It is wild and cultivated, soft and sharp, ancient and modern, useful and symbolic. It can grow in a hedgerow with tangled canes and red hips. It can stand in a greenhouse shaped for a perfect stem. It can scent a garden after rain. It can be distilled into oil, poured into rosewater, dried into tea, or pressed between pages. Few plants have crossed so many parts of human life. The rose belongs to science because its petals, pigments, scent molecules, pollen, prickles, roots, and hips all follow real biological processes. Its color comes from pigments in living tissue. Its scent comes from volatile compounds rising into air. Its bloom depends on photosynthesis in the leaves, water moving through xylem, and minerals taken from soil. Its hips carry seeds. Its prickles help guard the stem. Everything beautiful about it is connected to something functional. But the rose also belongs to trade. Damask roses grown for fragrance help support rose oil and rosewater industries in places such as Persia, Turkey, Bulgaria, and parts of Europe. A single small amount of rose oil can represent thousands of flowers. Behind that scent are fields, harvesters, cool morning air, distillation vessels, and long routes through markets and workshops. The rose became valuable because its fragrance was difficult to keep. People had to work carefully to hold what the flower released so easily. The rose belongs to food as well. Rose hips have been used in teas, syrups, jams, and soups. Rosewater has flavored sweets, drinks, and rice dishes. Petals have been used in preserves and decorations. The same plant that stands for romance can also become something served from a spoon, poured into a cup, or stirred into a recipe. It can be delicate and practical at once. The rose belongs to memory. Its scent can return a person to a garden, a room, a celebration, or a loss. This happens because smell is closely tied to brain areas involved in memory and emotion. A rose can call back a person who is gone. It can bring back a summer path, a wedding table, a funeral arrangement, a perfume bottle, or a childhood fence covered in leaves. The flower does not hold those memories by itself. The body gives them back. The rose belongs to love, but it also belongs to grief. That has been true for a long time. Ancient Romans used roses in feasts and in ceremonies for the dead. White roses can appear at weddings and funerals. Red roses can mean passion, but also remembrance. A rose can be placed in a hand as a promise or laid on a grave as a farewell. It can say welcome. It can say thank you. It can say forgive me. It can say what the voice cannot easily form. This range comes from the plant's own contrasts. The petals are soft, but the stem is guarded. The bloom is bright, but brief. The scent is powerful, but invisible. The shrub can be tough, but the flower can bruise in rain. The rose can be bred into almost impossible forms, yet it still depends on roots in soil and leaves in sunlight. It can be made into symbols, but it never stops being a plant. That is the quiet center of its power. Roses stay with us because they let many truths rest together. Beauty can be temporary and still matter. Softness can exist beside defense. A living thing can be shaped by human care and still carry its wild beginning. A flower can be scientific, emotional, useful, and sacred without becoming less real. So when a rose appears, it brings more than color into the room. It brings deep time. It brings chemistry. It brings gardens and trade routes. It brings insects, birds, and winter hips. It brings love letters, old ceremonies, perfume, food, grief, silence, and return. The rose lasts in human life because it cannot be reduced to one meaning. And even when the petals fall, its story does not close. So, as this journey settles, we can gather the rose back into one clear picture. And if some details drifted past like petals in the dark, the shape of the story is simple. The rose is not only a flower of romance. It is an old survivor. Long before bouquets, paintings, and love poems, rose-like plants were already growing on Earth millions of years ago. They were shrubs in changing landscapes, with stems, leaves, flowers, prickles, and hips. They learned how to return after cold seasons, protect themselves, and carry their future inside seeds. The rose also showed us that beauty and defense can live on the same stem. Those sharp points people often call thorns are usually prickles. They grow from the outer surface of the cane, like small hooks on the skin of the plant. They can protect the rose from hungry animals and help climbing roses catch onto branches or fences. So the rose is soft, but not helpless. It opens above with petals, while guarding itself below with sharpness. The rose also taught us that scent is not just a pleasant extra. It is part of the flower's living work. A rose releases tiny invisible molecules from its petals. Those molecules rise into the air and become the fragrance people recognize as rose. Some bring sweetness, citrus, fruit, honey, spice, green leaves, or a warm tea-like depth. That is why one rose can smell soft and powdery, while another smells rich and dark. And when that scent reaches a person, it can wake memory quickly. A rose can bring back a garden, a wedding, a funeral, a perfume bottle, a childhood yard, or someone who has not been near for years. The flower gives the scent. The body gives it meaning. Before roses carried human memories, they were sending signals to insects. A simple wild rose with 5 petals and a yellow center is easy for a bee or beetle to enter. The insect comes for pollen, and the flower gains a chance to move pollen from one bloom to another. The color helps the flower stand out. The open shape gives insects access. The scent helps guide them through the air. Before the rose spoke to poetry, it spoke to pollinators. And after the petals loosen, the rose keeps going. Many roses form hips. These small red, orange, or dark fruit-like structures hold seeds. Birds and mammals may eat them. People have used them in teas, syrups, jams, and old remedies. A rose hip reminds us that the flower was never the whole story. The bloom is brief. The plant is patient. Humans noticed all of this and slowly brought roses closer. Into gardens, perfumes, medicine, food, ceremonies, and symbols of love, grief, secrecy, friendship, and remembrance. People bred roses for fuller petals, richer colors, stronger fragrance, repeat blooming, long stems, and longer vase life. A modern rose may look like one simple flower, but it can carry centuries of human choosing. So the rose became a plant, a perfume, a medicine, a food, a gift, a memory, a symbol, a wild shrub, and a carefully bred bloom. And after all those meanings, the rose still returns to the same quiet cycle. A cut rose in a vase may last about a week. Its petals may open, soften, curl, and fall. Its scent may fade day by day. Separated from its roots, it can only finish the life already stored inside the stem. But a living rose bush is different. Below the soil, the roots keep holding on. Above the soil, the leaves keep turning sunlight into sugar. The stems keep carrying water upward. The canes harden, rest, and grow again. After a bloom fades, another bud may form. After a season ends, the plant may wait through cold or dryness until conditions return. This is the rose as a circle, not an object. Root, stem, leaf, bud, bloom, scent, pollen, petal fall, hip, seed, rest, return. That is the quiet truth the rose leaves behind. Its beauty matters, even though it fades. Its softness matters, even though it must be protected. Its scent matters, even though it cannot be held for long. Its bloom matters, even though the plant continues after the bloom is gone. A rose becomes beautiful because it keeps moving through its stages, opening when it can, feeding what comes near, letting go when it must, holding seeds for what may come later. And now, as the night grows softer, the rose can be left in that gentle form, not frozen in a vase, not only a symbol of love, but alive in the quiet. Roots in dark soil, leaves in still air, prickles along the stem, a bud waiting, a flower opening, scent rising, petals falling, a hip forming, seeds held safely inside, and somewhere within the sleeping plant, another season already beginning to gather.